Hello, everyone. I hope that you're all well, enjoying the semester of fall 2025. So today I'm just gonna chat and it's gonna be pretty casual. I'm just gonna go through the books that I read this summer. Just keep in mind, I didn't start all of these books in the summer, but I finished them. So some of these books, like Being in Nothingness and Phenomenology of Spirit, I've been reading just off and on for maybe a couple of years or a few years, something like that. So just keep in mind, I'm generally not like a super fast reader. But before we get started, just a bit of an update on myself. So I did not get the full-time philosophy position at my college that I interviewed for this summer. So now I sort of have to think about what my next step is. I wanted to sort of switch disciplines because I absolutely love my college. I love my colleagues and my students so much. But philosophy is just my passion and my bliss. So right now I'm applying for various graduate programs for fall, like the next academic year, fall 26. And yeah, it's been really fun adulting though. I'm gonna continue to enjoy it this year. But yeah, I think well, I'm teaching world mythology this semester, so I guess this is my call to adventure, and I'm going to take it. I'll also probably just apply to other full-time philosophy positions at community colleges since I have a PhD in religion. Sometimes that like works. But I really do want to go the PhD path because sometimes I think it's a good practice to think about, well, 10 years from now, at the end of my life, what will my regrets be? A regret would be not getting a PhD in philosophy. So I might as well go ahead and do that. But I didn't realize that that was such an important thing for me until I didn't get this job. So sometimes when you don't get something that you really want, you have to start thinking creatively and seeing what other paths kind of light up, and something new might present itself. So that's it. I'm taking an epistemology class, so I feel like I'm kind of playing catch up with that class though, because well, it's from an analytic philosophy perspective, and so I am sort of having to learn like logic symbols on my own, and really I'm delving into like the history of analytic philosophy since I think I've mostly been in the continental philosophy camp. So that's kind of interesting. We're reading Brian Stroud this week, G.E. Moore and DeRose. So I'm reading the DeRose right now. And I think it's all really interesting. Analytic philosophy, I guess, focuses more on like details and breaking things down to reach like clear, like a strong clarity. Whereas maybe continental philosophy is more about big picture and can be written in various styles and tones, like thinking the various ways that like Kierkegaard writes and Nietzsche's aphorisms and Jean-Paul Sartre's like 800-page book versus his novels and plays, etc. So that's really fun for me. And I'm reading about Sumerian mythology for my lecture tomorrow. Yeah, but that's really what I'm doing. I had a little bit of like a cycle of insomnia, like at the end of the summer before the semester started. I think just because I was, sort of thinking about what my future would hold. And I was just kind of anxious because I thought I would be going back to campus, as a philosophy professor full time, and I'm not. So, and then I also um, had to give up the role of chair for my English department because I was applying for it. So just like a lot of changes, I guess, and just I think that, you know, even if in our minds we aren't super stressed about something, our bodies might be holding sort of resistance to our life situation. And I think that I just had to radically accept a few things. And so, yeah, I think I'm getting better. Okay, so I have kind of two stacks here of my summer reading. I have a more like spiritual, mystical, psychological stack, and then I have a more philosophical stack, some philosophical novels. I'm going to start with the spiritual, psychological, and if you're not interested in that, you can just skip ahead if you want. But I'm glad that you're here. Drop in the comments what you're doing this semester, if you're taking classes, if you're not, what you're reading, if you're teaching classes. Glad that you're all here. So, the first book that I finished was The 64 Ways by Richard Rudd. He started off with human design, which I don't really know anything about, but he sort of channeled his own sort of system transmission, which is called the gene keys, somewhat based off of human design, somewhat based off of the Chinese divination practice, I Ching. But the 64 Ways is more of his like personal commentaries on the Gene Keys. There's the Gene Keys book, which is purple and it's about this length. I thought this was really interesting, just getting, I think like if you are following the system, which it's just kind of a worldview, a perspective to help you on your inner spiritual journey. So I really feel in alignment with it. It gives you like, you can go on their website and put in your information like you would put in for an astrological birth chart. And it gives you your 11 gifts, which align with 11 siddhis or your like enlightened almost like supernatural powers, but it's, you know, things like innocence and beauty, etc., kind of metaphysical. And then your 11 shadows, so they all kind of align with each other. So I really enjoyed reading this. It was just kind of a continuance of like thinking about the different, I guess, paths or ways or siddhis, etc. So I liked that. And along with that, two more Richard Rudd books, Dare to be Divine, which again is kind of not a reinterpretation, but a commentary on the gene keys, reorganized into various like thematic groupings. So this was a really good read for me as well. I really liked it. And then I picked up his book of poetry. And there's some great like illustrations in here. So it was just kind of a fun thing to read, you know, like having spiritual books for like devotional time. So yeah. And the next book is an Edgar Cayce book. Um, I think he's from Kansas or something, and he just like I don't actually know a lot about him, but I think just in his house, he just had this gift of channeling the Akashic Records, which is kind of like a collective, eternal reservoir of information about all of us and our past lives, our future lives, our soul's purpose, etc. And I guess he would like lie on a couch and close his eyes and like channel for people. And so I bought this book because I had a dream where I was living in this library, but people could like walk in as if it were like a store in the mall almost. And it was just like I was sitting down like in the corner on like a little, I don't know, platform shelf part, and I was reading, and then these three beautiful people came in, these tall, beautiful people, two women who looked like they were in like 1920s garb, and this man who was wearing a dark purple button down and black pants. He had black hair, and he sort of had the energy of like a shaman or something. And they came in, they were looking around. One of the girls picked up a book and asked like how much it was, and I sold it to her for $5. And the guy said, "Hey, it's really cool that we both like Edgar Casey." And I said in the dream, "Oh, I've never actually read Edgar Casey." So when I woke up, I bought this book, and I bought this particular one because it was purple, like the guy's shirt. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when something comes up in my dreams, it's like a suggestion for me. And I thought it was really interesting. I think a lot of times when you read books like this, like someone channeling someone else's past lives, or you look at like there's this YouTube channel by this channeler named Allison Coe, and she does like quantum healing, therapeutic channeling, hypnosis journey things. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I think that the messages, like I've watched and read and kind of exposed myself to some of this, and it seems like the answers, like if there's advice for a challenge that you're having in your career or your health or your relationships, etc., it seems like the message or the advice can kind of be applied generally to just any of us. I think there's, when you're thinking about in this worldview, this particular worldview of like a new age, new thought, I don't really know what to call it, like Gaia.com spiritual path. It seems like even though we have different challenges, we all have challenges. And the way to get through those challenges is kind of the same. It has something to do with surrender and letting go and accepting and non-judgment. And I don't know, maybe even like gratitude and joy, etc. So, yeah, so based off of a dream. And the next four are sort of mythological, but also like Jungian psychology, etc. So I'll actually go to the one that's kind of an odd one out. So I picked up this book on Demeter and Persephone. This is by a professor of women's studies, I think in Kansas City, Kansas community. I don't know if Edgar Casey is. He's like from the South, like of the US. Um, I feel like I really don't want to tell you wrong information. I'm sure you can look. Oh, Kentucky. Okay, Kansas, Kentucky. Okay. Edgar Casey, Kentucky, this mythology professor. Kansas City, community college, Kansas City. Kansas City is in Kansas. I don't know. Isn't there a Kansas City in like Missouri or something? I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Like I was in the musical Oklahoma, and there was a song. Okay, anyway. I was Ado Annie, if you can believe it. Um, so I don't know. I thought this book, I don't know if I would actually recommend this book. Maybe if like it really reminded me of like third wave 1990s feminist like women's studies programs in graduate school, because I feel as if when I was in graduate school, a lot of my professors really liked the readings that were from like the 1970s through the 1990s. And so we read a lot of that. And it's kind of a conversation where you use the word the patriarchy. So this was a good interpretation. I did like that there was actually the Homeric hymn to Demeter in the back, like full translation of it. That was amazing. I did appreciate going through the myth and seeing her perspective. But it was just too like feministy in a dated way. I don't know, that might offend some of you. I'm very sorry. But it just I don't know. I don't know. Like when I read let's say like Jungian interpretation of mythology, it's very much I feel like you can interpret it as we have the masculine and the feminine within us and their poles like yin and yang, and it's just kind of, it feels more inclusive. I just feel like as a species and a human community, like we're all kind of suffering and going through it. And so I felt like sometimes, this is just, I shouldn't say this, but I felt like sometimes in my graduate women's studies program, we were pressured to talk about how like we as women suffer and how it's the fault of men. And I I understand history, but I don't necessarily feel super comfortable with like a grievance kind of separatist conversation. Like, and I maybe this is because I'm a professor and I have students of various gender identities in my classroom, and I just feel very protective over all of them. I don't know, I understand the perspective, but it just doesn't really like jive with me all that much. But I read it. So anyway, but if you are inclined toward, 1990s feminism, you'll really like this, you know? Okay, so I feel like I offended a lot of people. I'm sorry. Maybe like my whole I liked my graduate program. It was great, but I also had to like unlearn some things. Okay, let's see. So I read Robert Johnson's We absolutely loved this. I feel like I kind of give the same spiel about it all the time, but it's We Understanding Psychology of Romantic Love. He is a Jungian analyst, lecturer, and he has also written lots of other books. I like him as a person, of what I can get from his books. I like his perspective. This book, each of his books kind of talk about like different myths as kind of a hero's journey to individuation. Um, and he really talks about in this book, how we relate to each other as people. And sometimes, and especially when we are attracted to particular types, like they are really archetypes that indicate to us different soul tasks within. So, for instance, if you are attracted to maybe someone who has like a lot of content on social media about like cooking from their garden, and they're getting their hands like really in the mixing bowl of tomatoes or something. I don't know. And like thinking about what's her name? I think her name's like Padma Lakshmi or something. She has a really like her channel, her Instagram is very like sensual and like Mother Earth, and like she's nourishing and she's cooking and she's like, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but you can think of, if you are attracted to like her content and her sort of personage that she expresses and displays, you might think about like what that symbolizes for you. Maybe you yourself want to be a little more creative and cook in the kitchen and have this kind of messy, earthy sensuality like for yourself. His point is that you don't always have to pursue the people that you are attracted to, especially if you're already in a relationship that is monogamous. Um, that you can look at it as a sign or a signal for what you need within, if that makes sense. So I thought it was really great, and I think it's a message that we should all like reflect on because I think it would lessen the drama that we have in our lives. And he also talks about how, like, a lot of times, really when we think about being really passionate and being really desirous of a relationship and the honeymoon period of romance, like, a lot of that is not really what the essence of a relationship between human beings are. Like he has this phrase that a relationship between human beings in love is more like stirring the oatmeal. Like you're both pursuing your own inner work and your own shadow work and your own connection to the divine. You're just doing it side by side together. Um, like neither of the people in a relationship can really fulfill the other person's sort of projections or fantasies of an archetype. Even though I guess we are always kind of shifting through various archetypes and always sort of projecting on each other for better or for worse. Um, it's being attached to that. And then maybe like the person who goes from like relationship to relationship, like when the fire dies, Robert Johnson really addresses that. And then I finished this critical dictionary of Jungian analysis. Sorry, I was just making sure I'm still recording. Just anxiety. I thought I would like 10 out of 10 as well recommend this. This is amazing. It was interesting to read, even though it's kind of a reference book, kind of a dictionary of terms. It's just really interesting. Like there's some of the entries are kind of short, but others are pages long on dreams and archetypes, fairy tales, the animus, the anima. Just, I don't know. I think this is a book that I will go back to as well. And I thought it was interesting to read. And then a Jungian lady, Emma Jung, Animus and Anima, two essays. So I really enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed her essay on the Animus, which is first, like more, just because I feel like with Carl Jung and some of the other Jungian analysts, there's a lot of talk about the anima or the feminine soul within the masculine identity, but there's less maybe written about, or at least that I've encountered, about the masculine soul within the feminine or woman's identity. And I'd like to do a video on this actually. I'm not going to read, I'm going to keep myself from reading. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just read maybe this one part. Okay, so she says, just to give you kind of an example of how she writes. This is under the section, the animus as it appears in the images of the unconscious. She says, we hear from men that the anima always appears in quite definite forms that are more or less the same in all men. It is mother or loved one, sister or daughter, mistress or slave, priestess or witch. Upon occasion, it appears with contrasting characteristics, light and dark, helpful and destructive, now as noble and now as an ignoble being. This is so interesting because I just gave a lecture on Gnostic mythology and we went over the hymn of the pearl in class. And we really talked about how the feminine in Gnosticism really seems to be as well, like displaying, contrasting, like holy and whore, or like shameful and shameless. Like these opposite poles are in the feminine and not necessarily in the masculine. And I think that's an interesting parallel here, what she says. She says, on the contrary, for women, the animus appears either as a plurality of men, as a group of fathers, a council, a court, or some other gathering of wise men, or else as a lightning change artist who can assume any form and makes extensive use of his ability. Um, let's see. She says the anima figure, however, is characterized by the fact that all of its forms are at the same time forms of relationship. She says, in dreams or fantasies, the animus appears chiefly in the figure of a real man, as a father, lover, brother, teacher, judge, sage, as sorcerer, artist, philosopher, scholar, builder, monk, or as a trader, aviator, chauffeur, and so forth. In short, as a man distinguished in some way by mental capacities or other masculine qualities. In a positive sense, he can be a benevolent father, a fascinating lover, an understanding friend, a superior guide. On the other hand, he can be a violent and ruthless tyrant, a cruel taskmaker, moralist and censor, a seducer, an exploiter, and often a pseudo-hero who fascinates by a mixture of intellectual brilliance and moral irresponsibility. Sometimes he is represented by a boy, a son, or a young friend, especially when the woman's own masculine component is thus indicated in as being in a state of becoming. That's really interesting. I don't think, like, I think when I have had dreams, I haven't necessarily had like a council of masculine figures. It's often been just like singular kind of individuals. But I have noticed that I don't think in the past, but recently, within the past like year or so, I have had dreams about, like she says, a boy, a son, or a young friend. Like I don't have any siblings, but I've dreamt about like a younger, like I had a younger brother, who was going through something, and maybe I was helping him, and he was also helping me in a task. Quite interesting dreams, I guess. But it's interesting to see, like, because when we grow up with the masculine and the feminine within us, right, as well. And so sometimes one gets like more developed or more affected by different experiences than the other. And it's really interesting to like kind of like get insight about how, I guess the animus within or the masculine within, when I was a child, how, that part of myself was affected. So I don't know. And like, and then getting to heal, right? Like as you go on your journeys in dreams. So I don't know. I think that those are really cool dreams, but I definitely have had like masculine figures or energies, be like a guide or like someone like a judge or something like that. And it's always really interesting, like the interactions. I don't know. I love dream work. Okay, so now philosophy. So I did read two philosophical novels. Um, Last year I finished Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. This year I've finished The Brothers Karamazov, and I love them both. I really love his characters. I love how he creates like his main. There's always like a main male character that's going through kind of a, I don't know, a journey. And it reminds me not how Proust writes his main character, but I like them just the same. I don't know how to explain it because it's such a mix of like sensitivity and thoughtfulness and reflection. Like in the Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha like wants to be a monk, and he's very philosophical and different from his brothers, even, but he has such a sense of like innocent wonderment as he evolves. I don't know. It's like very lovely to read. And then I finished Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I think if anyone ever mentions quality, I will think of this book. Um, this book was a journey for me. You can read my review on Goodreads if you are interested. I sort of loved and hated this book. Um, I feel the part of me that loves it is very much in a camp of belongingness with other people who love it. And then I'm very much an outsider. I don't know why it didn't, well, I think it's my expectations. My expectations were that it was going to be a really great, like, father-son road trip where they're talking about philosophy together. And really, it was mostly the father just like reflecting and giving his chautauqua, I guess he calls it, in his mind. And I thought he was not nice to his son. Like, I felt bad for the kid. It felt like the kid was kind of lonely. I don't know, because the whole book, it was a lot of the interiority of the dad. And he's basically contrasting, if I can remember, like two different perspectives in the world. One that is more, oh, I'm going to get this wrong. It's been a while. Um, One that's more romantic, that really doesn't want to deal with like the technicalities of the world and kind of brushes it off as like not beautiful. And then the other that can really appreciate the more subtle beauty in maybe like a machine, like a motorcycle, and how to sort of reconcile these two opposing visions of the world, because each side sort of, I guess, either focuses or disregards an important part of life that we need and that we can't really avoid. Um, I think on the one hand, the romantics maybe tend to be kind of careless and don't fix things that they should, or don't really explore doing things for themselves in terms of technology and machinery. And maybe the other side, like, can't connect with the romantic side because they're so preoccupied and fascinated by, the mechanics and the meticulous sort of like workings and dynamic of technology. So I don't know. I sort of want to read Leela, which is like, I guess, his second book after this. But I think that's just because I both like his books, but also want to make myself suffer. So I don't know why that is. All right, so I finished Bertrand Russell's The History of Western Philosophy. This is iconic. I would definitely recommend this. I know it gets a lot of critique because, it's like, I don't know, Bertrand Russell is very witty. Like, reading this, I just laughed out loud several times. Like his, I don't know if I can call it sarcasm, but or his just burns toward various people, but he doesn't have a filter, I guess. And I think that's just hilarious when he's trying to talk about the biographies of these various philosophers. I think you would learn a lot. And I don't know. I mean, I think you could, if you were new to philosophy, read this without actually reading any other philosophers. But I think it will be more interesting and enjoyable and entertaining if you have. Um, so yeah. So I just read it as if it were a book, like straight through, not necessarily as a reference. Although I did skip around when I was teaching Intro to Philosophy just to see what Bertrand Russell said about those philosophers. I finished Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit. I think that there are parts that I understood and just was obsessed about. And then there was a lot of it, I would say a good 50%, maybe 60%, maybe 70%, that I did not understand. I will just confess and say. I get what he's trying to do. I really appreciated when he had concrete examples. There seems to be like patterns that, this dialectic that was happening over and over, just with different historical periods or like areas of knowledge, etc. Or yeah, like historical times of knowledge and perspective concerning science and religion and philosophy, etc. But I think that what is really going to help me, do I have it here? I don't. Um, so I have this book by Tom Rockmore called Cognition something. And it is basically a commentary on this, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of time to read it this semester because of my world mythology class and my epistemology class, but I would definitely say for me, I need before I ever think about rereading this, I need to actually read some commentary on it, like the Tom Rockmore book. I think that's his name. Yeah. So definitely recommend. I'm so happy and proud of myself that I read this. It was just a major achievement for me. And, I read quite a bit of it in my Hegel, Nietzsche, and Marx class that I took. And when I lecture on Hegel, like I go back to reread and read some of the more accessible parts for me and for my students. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of this that's just a mystery to me, I'm not gonna lie. This book is probably, I don't know, can I say it's my favorite book? It might be my favorite book. Jean-Paul Sartre's Being in Nothingness. I'm so happy that I'm and proud of myself that I finished this. Like it's just so good. It's so good. I don't think that you can leave out any part of this. Um, I really felt like it was an experience and an encounter. Um, and a relationship almost that I can't leave. I can't quit. I don't know how to explain it. But I've already done various videos on this. I might go back to it just so I get the experience of reliving it. It's one of those books that I'm jealous of people who haven't read it or finished it because of the just the pure joy that you get from reading it. Um, yeah, I don't know. What can I say about it? I can't say anything about it, just that I loved it and that I finished it this summer. So I think 13 books, and I really liked them all except, maybe the Demeter and Persephone one. I'm so sorry if I don't know. I don't think the author would ever like see my video. I think it's a great accomplishment. I haven't written or published a book. So, I mean, it just maybe was not my cup of tea. It would perhaps have been something that I really loved like 10 or 15-ish years ago. But at this point in my life, I've just departed from that. Okay, so that's it. Leave your questions, comments. What did you read this summer? Did you understand Hegel's phenomenology of spirit? In general, but I mean, like when I'm reading the passages, the actual passages, I'm reading the words, but I don't know if I'm like getting the passages. So I don't know. That's why I like the Tom Rockmore book because it's not that I would need someone to summarize the ideas or, you know, the theses. Like I get that, but I don't get like, what is this sentence or this paragraph, this section? Like I want to know it more, if that makes sense. So there are a lot of books though that go like step by step, like section by section. I think that's really helpful. And also, I guess I would say that in the very back of it, there is sort of a shortened version. It's about, I don't know, maybe 80 pages, and it's basically a shortened version. So you could read that, side by side or first or last or as a reference. Okay, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks so much for hanging out.